Welcome to the Dorm Next Door. Skip this intro if you just want to watch the interview. That's completely fine. However, just for some background context, it seems today the obvious number one issue in our country, if not what the world is watching, right, is the issue with ICE and immigration in our country. The assassinations of people like Alex Preddy are taking the forefront, and they are constantly in the headlines of the news wherever you go, pretty much. And to provide really good insight onto the truth of what's going on is somebody named Garrett Lawrence. Now, his Instagram page is going to be tagged in the description of the YouTube video, but I encourage you, even if you're listening to this and you're not on YouTube, maybe you're on Spotify, I encourage you to look him up as well. Recently, he has been going, I would consider, viral on both TikTok and Instagram for opinions that many would seem to be maybe even insensitive. Right? That's obviously what the left would think about this young man, about this great guy. But the truth is you will look at his opinions and you'll see that he bases what he believes off of fact. He gives a lot of breakdown of the facts concerning ICE, ICE's duties, the fact that ICE takes an oath to defend their country, and also talks about immigration as a whole. The issue of immigration goes beyond simply what's going on right now concerning ICE. So the question is why are things like this today? Why are we seeing chaos? Is ICE completely corrupt, or are they simply making a few honest mistakes along the way? Or what is happening to the two deemed victims by the media in both of the ICE shootings? Are they innocent, or are the ICE agents actually just carrying out their duty, and unfortunately tragedies happen, which they do? You're never going to hear about successful ICE raids because whatever is successful and whatever works in our country will not be reported on. They just won't talk about it. And this is something that Garrett Lawrence also likes to bring up. Recently, his opinions on ICE, his opinions on immigration have been subject to a lot of discussion within his own Instagram page. And he has been able to show that from beginning to the end, he bases what he believes off of the evidence. He will not side with anybody without knowing first what the facts say. He is somebody that is in pursuit of the truth, and it seems today this is something that is greatly lacking in our country. He is somebody that has been able to look into not just one side, but look at several angles of the same issue, so that before he even decides to come to a conclusion. He's well informed on Virginia's policy. He's well informed on the current state of Virginia politics as well. But his strength is definitely immigration. His strength is the who, what, when, where, why of whether or not you're able to live in this country in the first place. He understands that America means something, and he wants to defend American sovereignty. This is the main center heart of the conversation. It is America. It's about protecting America. It's not hate for somebody that's living in our country illegally, but it's the acknowledgement that they don't have a right to live here at all. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Garrett Lawrence. So you just recently said that mass immigration is designed to replace white Americans and support Democrats in elections. But I was just wondering, what do you mean by that exactly?
It's something that I've been thinking about recently. It's come up in a lot of conversations with a lot of my friends. And watching immigration we can rewind about 10 years. We've seen a lot of demographic changes, specifically in how people vote, the culture they bring to America, and then exactly who is bringing these people here. But before I get into all of that, I'd like to kind of back it up and say, we should probably take a look at what America looked like, about 100 to 75 years ago. Mm-hmm. So a lot of Americans view the peak of America as 1950, 1960. And if you look at our demographics back then, you're going to see, let's take an example like New York. New York was 7.1, it was basically 95% white. It was 7.1 million people in New York out of 7.9, I think, or 7.4 were just white Americans. And not that, I'm against having cultures come to America or anything. I love having, a lot of different experiences here. Maybe not necessarily a melting pot where it negatively affects our American values. But a lot of people talk about the basically the elimination and the flushing out of the white population in America, a lot of people view that in a negative kind of connotation. They think it's a conspiracy theory. I mean, when you Google Great Replacement, you get a Wikipedia page that basically tells you it's a debunked, meaning like already proven false, conspiracy theory that is used to generate violence. Now, I don't want to get too off track, but when you go and you look into the rationale behind like something like Great Replacement, right? And it's just there are basically a bunch of groups there's two parts to it. There are groups that are funding mass immigration and basically legislatively kicking white Americans out of whatever you want to say, government contract bidding. What's another example? Government contract bidding. A lot of aid when it comes to relief for small businesses. There's even tax relief specifically for minorities in America that doesn't apply to white Americans. And it's a continued effort that has kind of flushed the white population into a corner where they're just being mistreated.
Do you think that one of the main things that we'll see from this is that hidden advocates for mass immigration are simply business owners? And you're talking about money. Mm-hmm. So do you think that a lot of the funding for this movement comes from people that just want a cheap supply of labor?
I think that is a huge factor in it for sure. I think there's two sides to that. Number one, you could say the short answer is cheap labor. You know, who's going to pick the grapes in California, right? That's what a lot of people say. It's like when you cut off immigration, you're cutting off the supply chain of immigrants to come and work for these companies, and pick the grapes in California. But the other side, that's the short answer. The long answer is that by reducing the kind of legacy American population, and you're going to increase the new American population, particularly immigrants who don't share American values, and some of these values even will be used to exploit the original legacy Americans. They're going to view Democrats, the people who are now handing out, benefits for voting for them, they view that as a way. I'll back it up a little bit more, but kind of the latter half is it's not just getting cheap labor, it's securing votes. That's just what it is. That's what it's been. That we know there's voter fraud. We know there are restrictions being lowered on how to vote. California is a great example. Virginia is in the line of fire of this kind of methodology. And so by increasing the population in America that is, mostly illegal immigrants, you're going to increase the amount of votes that are going to go to Democrats. Now, some people are like, oh, well, it's not, you have to have an ID here, here, and here to vote and stuff. Well, it's not even just elections. It's part of the census. You bring all these people in, and now you do a census every 10 years, and it's going to change the amount of electoral seats in your location, your state, and that's going to change how the election goes and which side of the election is more weighted, whether it's Republican or Democrat.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember the biggest mistake, and people forget about this, right? People are on the right, specifically, one of the biggest mistakes that they've made is they have, historically, I'm talking about 2016 is kind of when we saw this shift towards populism, but neocons, even specifically Ronald Reagan, were given a hall pass. And I'm telling you right now, in the early 1980s, Ronald Reagan granted amnesty. And I think this was in about 1985. So I'm pretty sure, I can be fact-checked on this, but it was the second term of Ronald Reagan's presidency. It was 1985 or 1986. He granted amnesty to millions of people in California, right? And in 1988, it was the last time that we saw California go red in a presidential election. And then, you can say whatever about governors. Arnold Schwarzenegger was a Republican, but he got elected because he was who he was. He was a movie star. He was very, very famous, right? And then from there, we have two-thirds majority in both the state assembly and the state senate in California. The governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, all very, very liberal. Both of our senators are very, very liberal. So we're seeing that California is essentially the prototype. It is always the first domino to fall. And it can start a domino effect for the rest of the country when you grant amnesty. I remember, so it's true, they do rely heavily on them for votes because Democrats have this plan. It's not even like they try to hide it. it's okay, we'll give you free stuff. And the free stuff goes a long way, especially when the free stuff is a promise to people that are coming to the United States in droves. Again, I literally remember I lived through this. I lived through 2021 through early 2025 when we had camps set up near the border because we have nowhere to put these people. It is one of the scariest realities is what you see when you have a decline in a nation. And I remember we were talking about this earlier. Gavin Newsom literally just said that he doesn't like how Trump is going to have ICE at the polls because he's going to scare away voters. And we both jump and we ask the question, who are the voters that are going to be scared? And it's the fact that they have relied so heavily on illegal voters. Where I live in San Diego, for a period of time, I would look around and I'd wonder every time I'd go downtown, how many of these people are even here legally? It changes the way that these cities look. Everything about it changes. The face of everything changes because of reckless immigration. And I agree. You lose your entire country because of it.
Right. Yeah, and even to like what Gavin Newsom said, his line of thought when you try to understand it is like he's trying to say like, oh, because of like these improper detentions that are happening and ICE is violent and all this stuff, that's why these people are going to be afraid. Not that they're illegal, but just even all minorities are going to be afraid because, ICE is making so many improper detentions. ICE has only made, as of October last year, 170 improper detentions, which, by the way, an improper detention is not even a deportation. It's never happened where an American citizen has actually been deported. That's just not happened. But being detained for a crime they think you're guilty of under suspicion, that doesn't necessarily violate all your rights. Your rights aren't limitless. But again, only 170 last year. 170 improper detentions, meaning you were either thrown in the back of a cop car or you were sent to immigration detention. 170 out of all of the other successful deportations we've made and arrests we've made, basically puts ICE's success rate at 99.73%. It's something ridiculous, the ratio. And to say that the tiny literally 0.01% mistake is enough to scare voters away, that's your reasoning behind saying that? That's just totally incoherent. Because we know what you're actually saying. You're actually against that because illegal immigrants are coming to vote. In Virginia, they are trying to pass a bill that was introduced on, I think it was the 14th of this month. They're literally trying to pass a bill where ICE cannot come within 40 feet or 40 yards of a polling center in Virginia. Why would that even be a bill? Unless you're, and they're going to say like, oh, well, ICE is violent and the raids have negatively affected Virginia as a state and it's going to scare people away from voting. If they have their ID and they're a legal citizen who's going to vote, they have no reason to be afraid because the failure rate, again, of ICE is less than 1%. So why be afraid? You could argue that maybe it's because of the media is blowing up these stories and so it's trying to scare everybody. But we know the reality is you're doing that so that your illegal voters don't get arrested and deported back to their home country. That's why you're trying to create bills like that.
I remember historically, you literally had 30 years ago, Bill Clinton sounded exactly like Trump on the issue of illegal immigration. Exactly like Trump. He knew that if you come to our country illegally, you simply do not have a right to live here. He was in favor of deportations. For both of Obama's terms, he deported just north of 3 million people. His nickname was Deporter in Chief, right? So where do you think the language changed? Where do you think the attitude changed to where we saw this switch in about 2016 to where illegal immigration, mass migration, mass amnesty, whatever you want to call it, has been used and weaponized by the left to attack the right? It's been the main thing that they've been using. Where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, honestly, it's interesting. I'm gonna take us back to like 2004. Okay, so 2004, we've got Obama and Romney. They're running against each other. No, that was 2008.
But that's McCain versus Obama.
Yes. And so Romney probably could have won had he run off of the values he did, which was
He was Mormon.
He was Mormon, but he was like, he had these views on immigration and all this stuff. He probably could have won the election in 2004 if he had ran, because his values were more popular then, and also the percentage of like Christian voters and stuff in the United States was much higher back then. And so after that, Obama comes in 2008. He starts supporting people, right? But at the same time, there's a giant kind of media change slowly happening. It gets embedded before you even know it's there. It's slowly happening, where the Democrats are realizing that this large voter base up until 2024, this large voter base of immigrants, they're going to vote for us. These minorities, they're going to vote for us. Whereas in 2024, it began to slightly flip. Trump was up 10 points in the minority vote last election, or 6 points. But I don't need to get into that right now. But and so it starts to change. So then the Democrats, right? They view these minorities and this large influx in immigration as a voter base, because that's what they are. That you track what the voting demographics are. Who are they voting for? What do their beliefs look like? Now, obviously, not everybody answers polling, but the data back then in 2012 and 2016 was pretty Democrat. It was pretty blue, you know? So you get somebody like Trump who comes in and he's like, hey, everybody, they're all costing us 150 to 451 billion dollars a year in fiscal drain. They're costing our hospitals not 100 million. Like, there's a hospital in Texas. They this past year, they weren't cost 100 million. It wasn't 200 million. It wasn't 500 million dollars. They were costed 1.05 billion dollars in serving illegal immigrants. And so Trump is looking at this as, go back to, or stay in Mexico, or what did he call, back to Mexico, I think was like his kind of slogan on immigration back then. And so Democrats, having full control since, let's say the 1990s of the media, right? You had the media shrink down from 500 companies to about, 10 now? 5 to 10?
And it's actually shrinking still.
Yeah, and it's continuing to shrink. And so they have this huge amount of control. They're going to lose voter base. Republicans are going to come out the woodworks out of every county to be like, you know what? Yeah, I don't want my tax dollars going to that anymore. I don't want to see my city flip blue because a bunch of people came here illegally. And so the largest gaslighting propaganda operation in the history of the world takes place. And that's why, and it's basically that everybody should be allowed to come here. A bunch of, old, ideologues from the 1950s and 60s and 70s about immigration suddenly get brought back up again after they were archived for 40 years, and liberals never brought them up again. And they get brought back up, and you want to deport illegal immigrants. It's hateful. I think some people might have good intentions. They don't want people mistreated. They don't want da-da-da-da. And that's okay. You can feel that way. Your emotions don't dictate the law, though. And so this giant change happens. This giant, large propaganda gaslighting operation. I mean, even today it's still happening. We've got the Democratic Twitter account tweeting, ICE arrested a 5-year-old. And it's like, they didn't detain a 5-year-old.
It's like, yeah, what really happened?
Right.
Like,
what actually
you're not going to leave
happened?
a 5-year-old out in the snow because his irresponsible father left it behind. Right?
Exactly. And so the psychological operation is still going on. And it's even harder today because of the media shrinkage we're seeing. And so that's what happens is it's God Sod calls it suicidal empathy. It's this idea that has been kind of slowly crept its way in since the 1970s and 80s and post-Cold War and post-Vietnam. It's just this idea of we are the sanctuary, not state, but sanctuary country. All of you come here no matter what. And it didn't rear its head till probably the 2010s.
Okay.
When we finally saw Republicans go, hey, this is going to be a really big issue in 30, 40, 50 years. Like, we're not going to have control of the country anymore. We're going to be a minority country. Like, that's not good. That's not what America is about. And I know I'm kind of rambling, but
No, you're good.
But yeah, it's just the largest psychological operation that's ever happened, and that's why I really believe immigration is probably the biggest issue because it impacts so many more things.
Well, it impacts the way that the entire country looks.
Exactly.
From top to bottom, it affects who eventually is the president of the United States. It affects the way that schools are. It affects what's taught in them. It literally affects who runs the country.
Yeah.
Because of the way that government is set up. Obviously, we have a representative government still technically, right? But I remember, going back to this, I remember one of the things that really showed where the American people stood on it. And the fact is that overall, immigration is the best place for the right to gain ground. Exactly. It's the best thing at it. Because I remember 2016, you had Hillary Clinton getting caught. What she did was she got caught saying, I want open borders. Her dream was that if we had no wall, no fence, no nothing on the southern border, where people were freely able to walk in and walk across both sides of the border. Mm-hmm. And I remember she got caught saying this. And it was one of those things where she was on her back foot, totally. And obviously we can talk about how Trump reaching out to the Rust Belt, Trump reaching out to the disenfranchised voters in Michigan, Wisconsin, wherever, fired him up to win. But also at the same time, for Americans to realize what was at risk, their entire country was at risk. Yeah. And even still, the language was very refined in 2016. I'd say in the big 2026, a decade later, we're able to more freely talk about these things and be more open about what we think. See, even the washed down peak political correctness of the 2016 to 2020 era, you still had the majority of Americans saying, I see this and I do not like it. Yeah. They saw it for what it was. Yeah. And those moments were super, super vital. And 2016 was in a way, I would say it was a more major turning point for United States politics than the 2024 election was. Yeah. Because it introduced the new ideology of the American voter, of the forgotten about American voter. You can say whatever you want about Trump. The movement at this point has shown that it can survive without him. Right? There will be a right without Trump. But he showed, and he was the beginning of this new wave of where you have America First today. He was the first major mainstream successful.
The original guy.
You had Pat Buchanan, right? You had, in a way, Ross Perot had those unique policies. Mm-hmm. But he was the first person that was uniquely able to illustrate the fact that this is the issue and this is the thing that they are trying to push. Hillary Clinton just got caught prematurely because they hadn't won yet. She thought she had it in the bag, which is why they made the mistake of talking about their agenda more openly to where they got caught red-handed. Mm-hmm. Would you say that's totally true? Yeah. Right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Super interesting stuff.
We remember the polling in 2016. It was like Hillary by 95%. Like, by Trump, like it's over. And obviously prediction markets were still like new then, but yeah, they were seeing polls and they were like, yeah, we've got this in the bag, and then they were completely backhanded.
Yeah, but when somebody says, immigrants built this country from the beginning of it, immigrants built this nation, what's your jerk reaction to that statement?
It's interesting. Honestly, I'll say, yeah, immigrants did. Yeah, in the very beginning, yes, there was a group of immigrants that came here before the country was anything. That's where the turning point happens. That's where there's a difference. Is because there's a difference between the people who actually created the country that you're wanting to come to, and then you coming to the country and not contributing anything. There's a big difference there. Up until we could probably say 1950 was a lot of America was being really molded together. Other than our 1776 moment, where the idea was realized. We faced a lot of trials, but really America was super perfected by about the 1950s going into the late 1960s. And we pinpoint then that's where immigration starts to change. I have a lot of friends that have come to America or their family came to America in like the 70s and the 80s, definitely through Ellis Island. I have an Italian friend. His grandmother came here. And she became what we called an Italian American. She became an Italian American. She adopted American values, contributed to the American society, and still celebrated her culture at home. What we see today is that's not happening anymore. You go to California, we have these anti-ICE protests and no Kings protests earlier in the year, or last year, and they're waving Mexican flags, or the flag of Mexico. you're celebrating the country you left to come here. And then on top of that, most of the immigrants that come here today, not all, most of the immigrants that come here today are either benefiting off of the American tax dollars in a way that previous immigrants didn't. There was a lot of immigrants that I know and families they came from where they didn't have all these insane benefits to starting a business or whatever. They came here, they were a cab driver, they drove a bus, they went to work on a farm. My grandfather, he went and worked on a tobacco farm as a kid for years basically until he could finally go and create something of himself. And he was just a true born American. He didn't get any of the handouts that a lot of people immigrating here get. And then on top of the benefits that immigrants are receiving today, which elevates them to a weird, they don't have full attachment to America. A lot of these immigrants send the money they're getting and receiving back to their home country. A lot of them bring their culture and their community along with them and kick out the American culture in the area they are already living in. And we see this in Minnesota, specifically Minneapolis. We have these Somali enclaves in Minnesota. We even see this in areas in California where, or even in Virginia, Northern Virginia, where you have these large Indian and Pakistani families that are coming and moving into areas, and they're creating their own miniature, whatever you want to say, Pakistan or whatever, Pakistan. They're creating their own little bubble of culture, and it's negatively affecting the people that live right outside. And on top of that, you have groups of people that then come and bring non-cohesive values to America. Whereas before that wasn't even really the case. You had your percentages of people that came and immigrated and committed crime. But today you literally have groups of people where it's in their culture to assault women. It's in their culture to beat women. It's in their culture to rob people. It's in their culture to, perform jihad and stuff. You know what I mean? Those are the people you're bringing here. That's a very big difference between the Italian Americans that came here in the 1960s. It's not the same. That's the thing. So immigrants did help found the country, but those are totally different people and a totally different time. You can't compare the two today.
Yeah,
you literally can't.
I remember being in my senior year of high school. I got in trouble, not actual formal disciplinary trouble. I was in this class and we were doing a senior year Socratic. I was at a Christian high school, and we all had to have, I think it was some form of take on the United States of America. Mm-hmm. Some form of change, whatever we want to do legally. And I straight up said, America needs to remain a majority white. White girl in the corner of the classroom starts recording me. I know it's on. Mm-hmm. All right? And my reasoning behind this, and I got attacked for it. Mm-hmm. My teacher says, well, I don't think many of the people on the right would agree with you. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? And he goes, yeah, I don't think Ben Shapiro would agree with you on this. And I'm like, that's fine. But my point is that even still, they're not going to vote for the right. And I gave up a point, and I got cut off because I think in this moment I was making a good point when I said that George W. Bush got pretty much the highest percentage of Latinos voting for him in 2004, right? He was getting about a little over 40%, right? Mm-hmm. And that was the closest that we got. Mm-hmm. We will never get to the point where the people that moved to the United States passed the majority of immigration. I mean, even still, if you moved here in the 1950s, there's a chances that you're probably passed away by this point.
Right.
So the alive immigrants that we have in this country are overwhelmingly from South America. They're from Mexico. They're from the Middle East. They're from Africa. Mm-hmm. Right. They're not coming from white Christian Europe, which doesn't even necessarily exist anymore.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's over.
Yeah.
And so I basically said, even though you and I, we're all coming from a good place. We're Christians. We don't judge people inherently by their appearance. Mm-hmm. It's still it comes from a good place. It just doesn't work. Mm-hmm. We're never going to live in an America
right.
in my lifetime where the people that are moving into our country are going to vote to uphold the American values that the right wants to keep. Mm-hmm. Because you come to this country and you still have a love for wherever you came from. You still have a love for Mexico and Mexican culture, right? That's why it's so dominant in California. Because the thing is that The reason why they're moving to the United States of America is not to adopt themselves into American culture. It's not to become Americans themselves. The reason why they're moving here is because of what we have to offer the world.
Right.
It's because what can they get from America?
Right.
That's the thing is we've switched so much from the 1960s where JFK said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Yeah.
We switched. That's not the mentality of most immigrants. They say they love the United States, but they love what the United States can do for people.
Yeah.
It's totally backwards. And it's that, sure, we have this role in the world where we are politically dominant, we're militarily dominant, we still are not obligated to be the support system and the safety net for the rest of the entire world.
Yeah.
That's not our job. Rome fell because in the outskirts of the great expanded Roman Empire, you had people that didn't love Rome and weren't loyal to Rome that were in charge of defending the outskirts of the Roman Empire. They would allow it to be conquered because they did not have their heart and soul in the country that they were a part of.
Yeah.
It's just this entire issue by design when you have millions of people moving to your country from countries that they would prefer if the United States wasn't cutting them a check.
Right.
That makes sense, right?
Yeah. 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 And I asked the question, okay, let's go back. What were the exact values and who were the people that founded the country and then continued to uphold those values up until, let's say, I keep using the 1950s as a good pinpoint because I feel like that's where things started to change. But up until that point, there was a very cohesive culture that came from our Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, European forefathers that came to America, right? And we created these values. That's what was successful for 200 years, That's what was successful. And now the left and even some people on the right are curious and are wanting to experiment. Now's not the time to experiment. It's worked for this long. Our country really got super perfected. A lot of people look at the 90s as an even better time to live. It was cheap. It was affordable. We had a good mix of people. We still were majority white. We were still, and again, there's nothing against other races. It's more of why can't we, you have your culture back home that you uphold and you protect and you want to sustain, you want to sustain your Somali culture. You want to sustain your Iranian culture. You want to keep that going. You want to sustain your South African culture. Why can't we sustain our American culture? What's so wrong with that? Mm-hmm. Where does that violate, moral laws and ethical laws? Where is that? How is that racist? Mm-hmm. You're doing it. Everybody else is doing it. Mm-hmm. You're even doing it to a point where you're bringing your culture to America and trying to spread it throughout America. But we can't do that within our own borders? Mm-hmm. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I remember seeing, people will go up to people on the streets and ask them questions. So Japan can be for the Japanese, and mm-hmm. they say yes. Mm-hmm. Africa can be for Africans. China can be for the Chinese. All the way up until the point you say, so can America be for the white Christian, the Protestant? The right. Protestants that built this country, even in the 1700s, you had to be a professing Protestant to hold office.
Yeah.
Why does it all of a sudden shift to where the United States does not have a right to be the demographic and the people that built it themselves?
Right. If people really, you go ahead.
No, I was just finishing off by saying huge problem there.
Yeah. If people really want to see the good trajectory and where everything is at, let's just look at this past election in Virginia, right? We have a candidate who ran moderately, right? But then has a posse behind her that are introducing bills that are not moderate by any means. And then on top of that, we have a lieutenant governor who gets sworn in on the Quran.
Right.
And is born in India. Listen, you can come here from another country to an extent through a very good immigration process I'm hoping we create. But I really don't think if you're foreign born, you should hold office. I don't think any sort of, we talk about, conflict of interest in every industry, right? It is a pinpoint of your HR department. Do you have a conflict of interest with this? Are you working with your girlfriend? Are
right.
you any of this, right? Why is an actual position in the government not held under discretion on whether or not you have affiliations with a foreign country. And you can say you love America as much as you want. We have people that have said things like that, and they love America, whatever. They come to America, and I want to create great things in America, but then they are loyal throughout their entire career to their home country. You have people like Ilhan Omar.
Right.
I would like to list a few others, but I'm blanking. But the lieutenant governor, right, sworn on a Quran, Indian born, and she's holding an office in Virginia. That just very blatantly, you got to be living in a bubble to not be like, I don't know about that. It's a little weird, don't you think?
Right.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
It comes from every angle too, and you have Congressman Randy Fine. Mm-hmm. He's evil, disgustingly responding to that tweet, and it was a picture on Twitter of a dead baby in Gaza, and I'm pretty sure that the person tweeted at him, and he said, "How do you sleep at night?" And he goes, "Just fine, thank you," responding to that exact tweet. So, literally to your point, it's not just that they come from somewhere else. It's not that. Mm-hmm. It's that they have values that directly oppose that of our United States morality, and they hold office too.
Yeah.
I saw this thing, and it's like, I don't necessarily know if it's true, but it's all of these people in Congress that are accused of their dual citizenship.
Yeah.
And a lot of time it's to Israel themselves.
Yeah.
Right? There should be no circumstance where you have dual citizenship in our country and you're serving in office.
Yeah.
Even still, we could break it down even further, and we could say that dual citizenship is actually a conflict of interest with your citizenship in the United States.
Yeah, it should be.
Right?
Yeah.
Because we are at risk to be spied on. Other countries want our technology,
Right.
all these things. America first means that you cannot at all lobby for another country in Congress.
Right.
And I'm saying that like it happens before, right? We can cooperate. But when you don't have to register as a foreign lobby,
Yeah.
questions need to be asked.
Yeah. I mean, part of your getting your citizenship, part of that process is literally taking an oath of allegiance to the United States. If you're trying to have dual citizenship, right, and part of your citizenship in America is taking an oath, you're right, we should view any sort of dual citizenship to another country as a conflict of interest. It's like, listen, I don't know, like if you're wanting to get a dual citizenship with America, we need you to make an oath of allegiance to us. You're going to have to forfeit your citizenship to that other country. That should just be point blank period. Like that is how it goes. And so we even have immigrants in America, right, who joke like, you have like Mexican Americans, right, who are like, don't mess with the cartel, they're gonna freak you guys up and all this stuff, and they're like, Mexico forever and all, and it's like, you're an American citizen, and they'll be like, yeah. It's like, well, you took an oath to support your military, and you actually, when in your oath of allegiance to the United States, you are also subject to serving your country in a militaristic capacity as well. So it's just, how can you go and be like super pro, Mexico or whatever, while simultaneously being a citizen in the United States? It's incoherent. It's a complete conflict of interest. It goes against our morals and our values and the culture, American culture, or the American, what's the word I'm looking for?
Sovereignty.
Yeah, American sovereignty. There we go. Yeah.
So switching gears a little bit, just recently, what do you think that people get wrong the most about the Renee Good shooting?
Okay. There's a lot people get wrong. A lot. There's even a lot that people on the right have gotten wrong. Because no, she didn't leave her kids at home. Her kids were taken from her. So there's that. So that's something the right gets wrong, is they're like, oh, she's crazy. She left her kids at home. Well, actually, it gets worse. She had her kids taken from her because she has a previous history of battery and assault. She assaulted a police officer in 2021, something like that. But what a lot of people get wrong is a lot of people like to say, like, oh, like, ICE can't go into an area like that and like perform arrests on people who aren't illegal aliens. I have news. There are literal laws in place to protect federal officers. What's a federal officer? That is police officer, ICE agent, DEA, FBI, CIA, anything. Anybody that goes and works in the field is a federal officer. And when impeding an investigation, they have the ability. They are then given the capacity, even if it's not something they normally do, they are then given the capacity to detain you, to arrest you, to pull you out of your car, whatever. I mean, that is like the number one do not do is impeding an investigation. So those are two things. The other thing too is when these issues arise and people are like, oh, like, you know, she didn't actually hit him, she was trying to run away. Well, we got vindicated. I mean, he had internal bleeding, so he was actually harmed. It's just more of people miss the principle of the fact that she is going out impeding an investigation, and not only is she impeding investigation, but she is, like, the data is there that illegal immigrants, I'll just give like what's a negative drawback of illegal immigrants? We'll just say the fiscal drain. You know, they cost everybody $150 to $451 billion a year, right? She's going out in defense of that. And I think even if you're anti-ICE, you're going to have to admit, like, protesting the deportation of people that fiscally drain you, you know, almost $500 billion a year, it just doesn't make sense. I think you should probably rationalize a little bit more. But those are some of the things I think people really get wrong is it's not as nuanced as a situation as people would like to think. It's pretty flat out and clear. You know, it's just another case of FAFO, unfortunately. Like, I don't think anybody should die. Nobody should die. But the law is the law. And I'm going to base my opinion off of the facts, right? And if the facts are that she impeded an investigation, I'm going to give them my sympathy, but I'm not going to deny the fact that she violated and broke a law. You know what I mean? People think that their emotions can somehow supersede the law. It's got to be enforced one way or another. Your emotions and how you feel, well, he didn't need to mag dump her. He didn't need to do all this stuff. And she was trying to get away. Even if she was trying to get away, like people like to say, well, she was driving away. She already impeded the investigation. She already had done that. It's over from that point forward. So even if she did drive away, she would have been arrested later on. So.
Right. That's interesting. I think what we can see from this and what we can see from the summer of 2020 is that people on a mass scale, their reactions to things like these isn't necessarily that they care. Isn't necessarily about the movements themselves wanting to do the right thing, wanting to support what they think is justice, right? People like to see the country burn down. People like to protest, and they like to riot for the sake of simply doing that thing. Minnesota is literally the state that does that better than anybody else.
Seems like they do that every 5 years.
Well, you also had, too, in an effort to remain popular, even though he's not running for re-election, you had Tim Walz basically attempting to come off as a hero, like he was going to, in a way, start a civil war. Like he was going to physically resist the president of the United States. Right? This isn't something that anybody should take lightly. It's not a joke. We're watching as these people are looking for these issues to be the excuse for them to either take action, go crazy, get political points. Nothing's off the table when it comes to events like these. Yeah. And these issues, they take them and they just run with them. Yeah. And you don't stop hearing about it. Yeah. Forever. Yeah. It's a really, really scary reality of the kind of country that we live in. But Minnesota is literally the hub for everything going bad right now, I swear. Yeah. You had Nick Shirley, who's getting cyberbullied right now. Yeah. That kid...
testifying in Congress.
Okay, that kid he doesn't come off speaking well. He doesn't necessarily... That's not his thing. He found a thing. He found a crime that was being committed. He went physically to the place, caught them red-handed. They wouldn't let him in. Yeah. There are no children there. And then he's getting ripped apart by the people in Minnesota while Ilhan Omar's husband gets rich at his firm in a year while the fraud is unfolding. So I think we can safely say here, with exceptions to Gavin Newsom, you have the most corrupt state in the country. It's got to be Minnesota right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the level of fraud that exists within the state, What else? What was the other thing? They were gerrymandering, or they had already done something like that. I don't know.
They're redrawing maps.
Yeah, that's what, or maybe they already previously did that a couple of years ago.
I don't know. I think the thing with gerrymandering is that it's just done by everybody nowadays. I feel like that's like the one thing where they just stop putting up a fight. They stop trying. They're just gonna send it. Yeah. Remember, we had 2018 North Carolina gerrymandered for the Republicans. Yeah. That was a big deal. Yeah. And now it's just states just do it.
On top of everything going on in Minneapolis, you got on Sunday morning, you got Don Lemon and a bunch of protesters march into a church and interrupt a church service. And Don Lemon's rationale is like, well, sometimes you need to go in and you got to make people feel uncomfortable. Protesting will sometimes make people feel uncomfortable. Listen, protesting, okay, the reason for protesting is to basically petition the government for a redress of grievances, okay? What he did is domestic terrorism, going into a church, terrorizing children, screaming at people. He had a whole crew of people screaming at people. What we're seeing is there were some arrests made, according to, who is it, Pam Bondi?
Right, it was the people that were with him.
There were some people that were with him. And he has walked free completely. But not only did that occur, but in follow-up interviews, right? He was like he was talking about their sovereignty in the church is like white supremacy. Like them not wanting to be interrupted by, a protest at their church is somehow white supremacist. And so then you can even lob into he had racial motivation to go in there and do that.
That's fair.
You can even lob that in there because he's saying, well, they're white supremacists. Well, this is a church service. You know what I mean? You guys are welcome, but don't do this in the house of God. And I got to give major props to that pastor.
Dude, that guy got
was
cornered.
Super chill and was like, you got to, like, he was like epitome of like, honestly, like, I know if he has kids, he's probably a really good dad because he was just like, you have to leave. Like, he didn't try to get physical and he didn't even try to debate. It was just like, you have to leave. Like, we care for like everybody, but not in this way. And he's, you know what I mean? And they're just screaming in his face.
Well, Don was literally trying to start an argument. Then and there, he was trying to. Obviously, it was for his own media.
Yeah,
because
he's washed up.
Don Lemon's independent now too, so he was just trying to get clicks. And the pastor is not taking the bait.
Yeah,
he's answering everything perfectly. He's like, "Look, I'm the pastor. We're supposed to worship. I'm supposed to look after these people."
Yeah,
and then that pastor was so uncomfortable there.
Yeah,
because he just kept pushing. He kept pushing. He kept pushing the pastor's buttons. Eventually, to the point where it's like, this guy can't just stand here and argue with you. He's got a congregation of people that are being threatened.
Yeah.
Just completely. That was like one of the most out of touch things that I've seen a person do in the last. I mean, it happens all the time now, but in the big 2026, that's the most out of touch thing that I've seen done.
Yeah. And then in Minnesota fashion, the people that have been arrested have already been released. So there's that. That's how that works.
Have you seen that one video where the girl, it just came out, it's like talking about being a Somalian is more than just bananas and rice.
Yeah,
it's like bananas and rice.
She can't name anything other than bananas and rice.
It's like bananas and rice. Why would you put them? Like,
why would you even just?
Why'd you put them on the stage?
Self-own like that? Like, I'm not even.
Not just hate here, but I think the average Somali is like contributing about $500 a year to the United States economy. Yeah, they're about 170 something in IQ when it comes to like the world. Mm-hmm. They're having the issue with Somaliland where the new president of Somaliland is entirely taking Netanyahu's bait because Netanyahu, obviously all the Arab nations know this. They're looking for an excuse to move the Palestinians to a country. Yeah. So obviously Netanyahu's a smart guy. Mm-hmm. So he knows that Somaliland, being the first nation Israel is to recognize Somaliland's sovereignty, they're going to take the bait and they're going to move all the people here. So like, if they're not smart with their own country, obviously it's Somaliland is the break off. Right. What makes you think that they're going to come to our country and provide? Right. They're stealing from us.
Right. Yeah. It's like you go, like if you want to know like what is the level of quality of people we're getting here? Are you a net negative or a net positive? Well, let's just go back, look at the country they're coming from. Okay. Is it a prosperous, golden utopian society like they want to make here, apparently, right? Is it? No. Somalia looks horrible. It is doing horrible. The people there are horrible. It's crime, it's violence, it's terrorism, it's all of the above. You can even say the same for, let's just say, a lot of the people coming from the Middle East here, and a lot of these Islamic enclaves that are being put up. You know, you have the Islamic Brotherhood in America that's been around since what, 1991? 1991. You have these like who literally live by a manifesto that they want to, achieve a global caliphate. They want to invoke Sharia law in the rest of the United States. That's their goal. You can go and actually speak to, I think it's their names they're called the imams or something. I'm forgetting the name, but it's like knowledge bearers basically, and you can go ask them just like, hey, like what's your goal here? It's like, oh well, we want a global caliphate, and we want to ensure that we can enact jihad and invoke Sharia law, and if we can't invoke Sharia law, we will enact jihad to invoke Sharia law, and so you have like those are the people you're bringing in. And so one of my friends said, like if I've got a jar of candy, and a lot of people say, and we're going to talk about Islam for a little bit here, but a lot of people say that the radical Islam, that like basically who we view as terrorists, is like 10% of the population. It's actually closer to about 36% of their population. And so if I've got a jar of candy, it's 100 candies, right? And I have a basically 30% chance, 33% chance, 36% chance of pulling out a thumbtack and swallowing a thumbtack. Should I keep inviting those people in? And even if it's 36 of those thumbtacks, right? The other rest of the candies are in full support of those thumbtacks harming me.
Yes.
They are in full support of it.
I remember what you said. We were talking about this recently. You said, there is no such thing. This is true. Doctrine-wise, there's no such thing as radical Islam. Either you follow the religion,
right,
or you don't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like
you either observe or you live it out truthfully.
It is the doctrines of the Quran is convert by force. Mm-hmm. There's no questions about that. No lying about that.
Yeah.
The Prophet Muhammad himself led by example when he would go and conquer an area, decapitate the people. He decapitated like I don't even know, hundreds of Jews at once.
Yeah.
Right? It's either you follow the doctrines and you do what the Prophet Muhammad wants you to do,
right,
or you're not actually following Islam correctly.
Right, exactly.
Crazy.
Exactly. And so that's why a lot of people, specifically people who just don't, I'm going to say like Americans who don't understand how the Quran works. These are recitings directly from Allah.
Right.
And so it's not like in the Bible where we have prescriptive scripture and descriptive scripture. Like we're going to describe this thing that happened. That doesn't mean you go and do it, right? Every single piece of scripture in the Quran is a commandment. A lot of people like to say, oh, well, there are amendments and stuff. And if sometimes there are certain groups that change things. And well, if they are doing that, then they are not living in full accordance with the Quran. And so that's why you have groups like Douglas Murray, his book on democracies and death cults. I don't agree with everything he says, but it is a phenomenal book, and he gives you a really good idea of like what's going on in the Middle East between Israel and Palestine and everything. And he gave an example of what Islam looks like for a lot of the Palestinians. You will have these guys on October 7th in 2023 who, hop the border, they go and kill a bunch of people violently, okay? And they're on their WhatsApp talking to their mom. Their mom is not there. So we have three people, okay? Their mom and their dad are on the phone. The son is actually over the fence killing people, okay? The mom and the dad, you've got three people. The mom and the dad are on the phone saying, oh, I wish I was there with you. I wish I had I wish I was there with you. I'm so proud of you. You are doing the work of Allah. Like, you are so wonderful, right? Okay, so one out of those three people actually enacted the teachings of the Quran, right? Two other people are in completely full support, right? Though they might not actually do it, that's what they think. That's why even when you follow, I'm forgetting who was, I think it was Nick Shirley several weeks ago, 2 weeks ago maybe, there was a anti-Islam march led by, I think it was probably Jake Lang, but I think Nick Shirley was there.
Yeah, didn't Jake Lang get ripped?
Yeah. Yeah, so he got, I'll get into that in a second. But this march, right? You have these guys, these Islamic men, right? They're walking around, they're marching, they're chanting, whatever, and Shirley goes to interview these guys, and it's like, they're literally admitting, like, I might not, like, physically be able to kill you right now, but, like, it is in my belief, like, my heart, as taught in the Quran, has to hate you. So, like, an Islamic man can marry a Christian woman, but in his heart, he has to hate her. So, like, a lot of these people, you might want to say, like, oh, well, that's about, 64% of them aren't, like, violent and stuff. Yeah, but 64% of them, if they're truthful in any way to the Quran, they believe it in their heart that, like, the infidel needs to die. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I need to hate the Christian. I have to hate them, right? So even if they aren't actually knocking on your door and forcing you to convert, right? It's in their heart. It's in their mind. So do you want to invite people that think and live that way? Probably not. And then Jake Lang, right, does this anti-Islam march Saturday morning. It was either Saturday morning or Saturday evening. And it was yesterday. Yeah, he's doing this march. He's a ex January 6th prisoner. Trump pardoned him. He's a little bit probably on the more far right, more extreme
He's
side.
more militant.
He's more militant, yeah. I don't like fully subscribing to some of that behavior. Now, going and doing a march, go for it, by all means. But they do this march in Minneapolis, and he gets basically taken away by the crowd, and he's hiding up on a ledge. And they're beating him, hitting him with flagpoles, but he got, like, bludgeoned on the back of the head and, like, stabbed or something on the back of the head after they pulled him off of this ledge. What's funny is that while he was on the ledge, there was a black man standing in front of the ledge trying to prevent people from pulling him off of there. Big props to him. And he was kind of saying, like, like the teachings of Jesus, like, I don't really even know much about, like, what Jake has said, but, like, I'm not going to, like, physically harm him. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not the Christian way. And he was basically trying to hold people off from dragging him off of the ledge. He unfortunately didn't succeed because they ended up pulling him off. But yeah, he's getting bludgeoned in the back of the head. They're beating him. They're kicking him. He's slowly throwing paintballs at him, or balloons of paint. He slowly makes his way out of the crowd, and he finds it's like a red Dodge Dart or whatever. He's getting into the car, and they're not letting him get in the car. They're holding the doors open. They're banging on the windows. While he's in the car, they're trying to kick him. Very brutally violent, very clearly. And what's funny is that the drivers of the car, ironically, for everything that Jake Lang stands for, the drivers of the car was a transgender woman and a lesbian. So it was really funny when he realized
Is that like an Uber or something?
It was something like that. Yeah, he hopped in somebody's car.
That's a dumb idea, dude.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, just random.
He just hopped in somebody's car, and they just happened to be like people that don't like him. But they drove him out of there. They were nice enough to drop him off, so he got out of there fine. But I mean, that really was another. When I was watching the feedback on that, I was like, are we about to watch another guy die? Are we about to watch another conservative talking head die? Really? And when stuff like that starts happening, I get really heated, and I'm like, yeah, we got to really start enforcing, the law, like, as much as we can. And I mean, like, we have to start introducing lethal force, because it's getting to the point where you've got people barging into churches now. You know what I mean? Right. Typically through history, people who did that were not the good guys. But obviously, because it's Minnesota, nothing's actually going to happen. These guys are going to sleep in jail for a night, and they're going to let them back out, and they're going to show up at another protest and grab their $10,000 for being there. So
yeah, that's interesting that you say that. But one thing that's crazy is that we're watching our country slip away beyond just the people moving here. I remember realizing that by 2040, Germany will be a majority Muslim. It just will be, right? And it's because if you have, I think it's anything less than 2.1 kids per family, you are now below the replacement rate. The replacement rate is if you want to have an existing society, you need 2.1 kids per family. Mm-hmm. We're below that right now. Yeah. Incredibly below that. I think we're at like 1.7. Yeah. France is at about 1.1 or 2. The other countries are hovering below a level to where no society has ever come back from that. We're right at the brink where it's like, yes, we can still technically come back. We can come back. But Europe themselves, they're past that point. Yeah. Right? And so I think Muslims are having, like, I wouldn't even be surprised if it was 10x the number of kids that we're having. Yeah. They're having so many more kids that you're going to have Dearborn, Michigan, but it's going to be across the country. And this is my main problem. My main bone to pick with the right now is that it's almost like you need to pick a side. Either you're going to go after the Muslims or you're going to stand against Israel. And if you stand against Israel, then you have to be friends with the Muslims.
Right.
How about you understand that you're a Christian and that Christ is king?
Yeah.
You don't
You're
have to
a Christian
pick a side.
in America.
You don't have to pick a side. When you literally, it's almost like these people don't have enough faith in God.
Right.
Because it's like,
Right.
why are you so worried about compromising with one side and having to pick one side? When you realize that you have God on your side, you don't need to compromise. You are the independent variable.
Yeah.
You are the one that knows where right is. You can draw the line of right from wrong because you have the author of right from wrong. That is your God. And so that is definitely my main criticism of the right now.
Yeah. The whole side picking. Well, that's what's going to lose us things like the midterms and stuff, is you have people that are getting obsessed with infighting, right? You have Israel first Republicans versus America first, Republicans or Christians and conservatives. And that's where the fault is. And that's why I'm like, people are like, oh, well, like if you're against sending foreign aid to Israel, like, are you in support of Palestine? Are you in support of Islam? And are like, who are you, right? You're a, what are they, Tucker Carlson and stuff like that. They start throwing names at you like that. And it's like, why can't I just be America first? And it's like, some people are like, oh, well, you're just an isolationist. It's like, okay, listen, yes, we want to be as isolationist as possible in terms of our foreign influences on our actual congregation of people, and whether that's in the government, things like APAC. We have the it's CAIR, which is CAIR. That's the Center for American and Islamic Relations. Yes. It's basically the APAC for Islam. You have the Islamic Brotherhood, which started in 1991. They have a manifesto on wanting to create a global caliphate and obviously overthrowing the American government with an Islamic one. You have all of these things. And somehow everybody's got an issue with wanting to just be America first in a way that is kind of isolationist. And sometimes that even looks like we had the Venezuela situation, right? I love it when America is isolationist, but will still intervene where it benefits America and America only the most. Mm-hmm. I like that. I like a little bit of that chauvinism. You know what I mean? Especially if it involves kicking out our foreign influences from our hemisphere. You know what I mean? Like, China's been trying to, like, I don't think people understand how big of a deal it is that, like, China is opening a Chinese embassy, like, in London right now, and then one in California. Like, I don't think people understand that that's a big deal.
Right.
Like, China 100% is going to wane and literally die off because of their birth rates in the next probably 30 to 40 years, but they're still a threat presently.
That's interesting. I've never heard that take, because the take that's really popular right now is that by 2050 they actually take over the United States in dominance. But nobody ever takes into account the fact that they themselves are crumbling from the inside out, and how fragile their actual economy is.
That's why they're trying to institutionalize themselves in America, is because their actual nation is crumbling from the inside out. You know what I mean? So they're trying to get their fingers in everything as much as they can. But right now really is the time to strike. They are at their weakest right now. You know what I mean? Because they can't institutionalize anywhere else, as far as we know, as long as we stay on top of it. And their birth rates are horrendous. And they tried to bounce back from the, what was it, the
one-child policy.
The one-child policy.
Really bad idea.
You can't do that for 10 years, 20 years or something. You can't do that and be like, oh, no, we're all going to die. You know what I mean? We need to bounce back from this somehow. You can't make that up. You can't return to birth rates quick enough like that. And then on top of that, their population, they're lying about their population. Okay, they have, we're talking thousands of miles of like cities and stuff in China that are just completely empty. We had a leak from Shanghai that said their population was not 1.4 billion, but it was in 2021 this leaked. It was closer to like 850 million. So this whole like China's this ginormous threat, and it's total malarkey. Total malarkey. You know what I mean? So but because of that, That's why they're trying to institutionalize themselves in America. So we should not really view them as much as a militaristic threat, but more as an institutional threat, because that is where they are affecting us most, I think.
To be dead serious, I was actually kind of surprised when they didn't fire a nuke after we took Venezuela. That's 70% of China's oil supply just gone, right? And then now we're going to be hopefully barring all. I'm completely on the side, completely barring their influence in the Western Hemisphere when you take Greenland.
Yeah.
Because now what we want to do is the reason why we want to take Greenland is because right now Trump had to adjust the electricity prices so that those that have AI data centers would pay more because they're using so much that every single American was going to see a rate hike because of it.
Yeah.
So what you do is you move those centers over to Greenland because it's cooler, so you don't have to pay less for cooling, land, all those things. They have those materials, but also maybe even still if you want to manufacture computer chips there, so you're not relying on Taiwan.
You have literally all of the minerals you need right there. And then on top of that, we have like the best mid-Atlantic strategic position against Russia right there. Right now we have nothing out there. We have a little base out in Scotland. It's like one tiny sub base we've got in Scotland. And Scotland is super against us having basically having our base there. Or it's like some sort of joint operation over there. They're so against it that like right now they're protesting in Scotland for independence from the UK. And if they do, as much as I want them to be independent from the UK, if they do get that, they probably will kick us out of Scotland. And I think that's also why it's a little bit of a game of 4D chess for us to get Greenland, is because it's our backup. Not only that, but by moving into Greenland, obviously nothing really came about this. I mean, maybe there's things that happened last week that we don't know about, but when we were moving out to Greenland and we're going to have these meetings here where NATO is sending all of this infantry out to Greenland, basically leaving all these places in Europe and the Middle East like basically unsurveyed by NATO. So I'm sure we kind of used that little game of chess to make moves in the Middle East and Europe, like without anybody knowing. We didn't hear anything, obviously. But yes, like you were saying, it's necessary to bring everything to America. We were a net positive in oil and electricity last year. We were a net negative on immigration last year, meaning people.
Yes, that is true.
People that are here, and for a net negative in immigration to happen, is like people who are here legally have to leave. Like it's just like we were I think it was net negative, like 800,000 people this year.
That's crazy.
So, and that is without like finishing a wall. That's without like doing any of that. That is just strict enforcement within the borders, not even at the border.
That's very, very interesting. It's a good take though. But my question is like, obviously Putin's doing a good job. He always puts Russia first, right?
Yeah.
Why do you think we are always posed to be enemies of Russia?
That's a good. That's one I've been contemplating recently because I got into it with somebody regarding Ukraine last week, and I'm still just really not. Ukraine is something I'm just fully not educated on. But I think it's because.
Let me tell you my understanding. Okay.
Yeah. Tell me what you think.
Here's the thing. One of the things that Ukraine did, and this was a fat mistake, is they stopped the export of like these precious, vital, necessary materials from Ukraine, which Russia was reliant on, right? Because it used to be a part for the most of Russia's existence, which is over 1,000 years now, right? They've had claim to Ukraine a good portion of the time. Okay, when they stopped the export of those materials, it took a major hit. Ukraine domestically, right? Because they were dependent on that industry themselves, and also Russia took a hit themselves. So Russia needs the export of these materials. And also, one of the things is that the argument is that, Putin himself, right? He just wants to have the glory of the Soviet Union again. That's because he's KGB. That's where he came from. Well, the way he looks at it from a Russian perspective, Ukraine has always been a part of Russia. And for them to make that move and to stop exports of things that Russia needs that harms the Russian economy, he is putting Russia first if he says, okay, now I just need to take it back and completely, because he can't necessarily force them to take back their decision. They're not going to listen to Russia.
Right.
So Putin needs Putin needs Ukraine because of what Ukraine has given to Russia historically.
Right.
What it has to offer.
Right.
So it's just, if you think about it, Putin's perspective is really, it's hard to argue with. It's just the fact that NATO and our priorities are just, they end up in contrast to Russia because Russian interests are sometimes contradictory to the United States interests.
Yeah. I think, I would probably say the same and agree with that. Yeah. And then on top of that, like, because our interests are not always the same, I think a lot of people, the media does so much, but I think a lot of talking heads and a lot of even more democratic people, or people on the Democrat side, take that as an opportunity to be like, oh, you see him? Like, he's doing stuff that, like, Trump would want to do, right? Well, that's what dictatorships look like. That's what fascism looks like, you know? We need to avoid that. We can't end up like Russia. There's innocent people in Ukraine. We need to again, it's just prying on people's empathy and emotions. It's not actual logistical, like, you gave an actual logistical, real scenario that's happened, and that's why you're like, okay, I can understand the motivations behind that. But as soon as you bring in people and emotions and all this stuff, it becomes all cloudy. That's
the go-to to just abandon logic. And it's like one of those things where people will get very, very upset with Trump because he'll maybe do something that, you know, we need Congress to approve that.
Right.
Okay, let's take a look at the earliest days of the United States existing as a country.
Right.
And say, oh my gosh, Thomas Jefferson really had no reason to be able to pull off the Louisiana Purchase. He did that. He should be able to. But you know what? Think about this. There is a universe. There is a reality, a very, very strong possibility the United States would not exist if the Louisiana Purchase, if that purchase did not take place, because Napoleon could wake up one day and he could decide that he wants to invade the United States, and he had every legal ability to do so, because that was his land.
Right.
And so Thomas Jefferson didn't necessarily, he wasn't that guy, right? He made the conscious decision to put his country first and say, I'm going to make that purchase. And it was probably one of the best executive decisions that a president has ever made in the history. And nobody will argue with that. They just can't put things into perspective and realize that when it comes to Venezuela, when it comes to Greenland, in the future, I think historians will look back and they'll say, Trump made that exact same decision.
Yeah.
He did the right thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We should buy Greenland, and then I think Canada next, and then Mexico next.
Dude, Mexico is... You can't even go to Mexico right now. Like,
you can't.
I would go every year. I've literally had interactions with cartel, and it was in a bathroom of a Senor Frogs.
Wow.
It was a weird one.
How did that go?
So I walked in. I was having a great time, and we're not going back. My family and I were not going back to Mexico after, obviously, the president said she's not doing anything about cartels. It's more dangerous down there. Anyways, I'm in the bathroom with Senor Frogs. Okay. And I walk in. The music was freaking awesome. I love Senor Frogs. It was so fun. And I go in there, and I walk down the hall, and I see the insignia to a male. I'm like, this is a men's bathroom. I start to open the door, and then this guy, he yanks the door open for me. He's inside of the bathroom. And I look over, and I'm like, oh, I'm in the wrong place. Like, I know Mexico. I shouldn't be here. I'm like, oh. And he looks at me and goes, and I go, oh, no. And I'm like, bathroom. And he goes, oh, yeah. So I walk by, see two little kids in there with their dad, right? This is a bathroom. I see somebody vaping in the bathroom. I book it all the way to the stall in the back, okay? And I'm like so scared. And I was like 17 at the time. And anyways, I walked from the bathroom to, I went to the bathroom. I was in the stall. Came back, went to wash my hands. So in Mexico, they'll have people that work in bathrooms for tips, and they'll like put soap in your hands and they'll hand you a paper towel.
Right.
Standing next to that person was the most hideous Mexican dude I've ever seen in my entire life, with a metal bucket and a bunch of little pink baggies, and I still remember the insignia on it. It looked kind of like the infinity sign.
Okay.
And they have white powder in them in this metal bucket.
My.
And he looks at me. And he says, you want some cocaine, bro?
Oh,
and
my.
I'm so stupid. I got in his face, and I said, no. And I look back, and my dad is like doing the splits in a little kiddie urinal because it was the only one that was open. So he's peeing. And I'm like, How do you not know what's going on right now? How do you have no idea that this guy's selling cocaine? And I left the bathroom. My dad was oblivious. And after that, I was like, Senor Frog sucks. I was like looking at the waitress. I'm like, you disgust me. Yeah. Everything's gross. But yeah, Mexico, it is in our best interest and Mexico's best interest if we prevent the cartels from existing.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I mean, mark them up as a terrorist group and take them out. Delta Force, go take care of it. Come on, guys.
You heard it here. Well, this has been great.
This has been phenomenal.
We went for a while. This is good.
Yeah.
I've never gone that far. But, I was very, very grateful to have you on. Please keep doing what you're doing. Keep going. Keep making those videos. Like I'm not kidding you. The shorter videos that you make are the ones that are the selling point to everything else that you have to offer. Mm-hmm. So just keep killing that.
Thank you.
And I'm going to address the camera, but thank you so much, Garrett Lawrence.